and to disagree with you on another, Mr. Ahmed al-Sheikh. I want to agree with you on the fact that it's extremely difficult for us to find out what's happening within science institutions in the Arab world. They do not open their doors easily to us. I have an experience similar to your own. I was doing a story on stem cell research, and within half an hour, I had heard from the Weizmann Institute in Israel. But it took me a month and a half to get information from the Arab institutions. So I do agree with you. I think the reason for that is that in the Arab world, we do not have public information officers in our science institutions whose role is to communicate the science that's happening in these institutions to people outside of the institutions. So I agree with you on that. But I disagree with you very much on the fact that to have a science program or to include science in media coverage, that you need to have scientists to do that. It's not the role of the scientists to do that. You have journalists, and like Dora said over there, that if you have a good journalist, the journalist can cover anything. You don't need to be extremely knowledgeable about something. And as Dr. Khaled said, that you go to the person. If you're a good journalist, I'll go to the scientist, and I'll make him give me the information in a way that I can understand it. I'll help him communicate it to me in a way that I can understand it and then communicate it to others. So you don't need scientists to do these programs. You need a very good journalist, that's all.
Just picking up on that point, though, I mean, one thing about the relationship between scientists and journalists is that very often it appears to be source and, from the scientist's perspective, parasite. I'm here, I'm going to leech the information out of you, and then I'm off, basically. And in order, I mean, one of the key things one of the transformations that's happened in Western journalism, I found in the United Kingdom, and Patrice, maybe you found the same in Belgium, is that we have now started to develop relations of mutual respect. You are a professional in science or medicine. I am a professional in journalism. We are peers. We are experts in different disciplines, and we are equal. And one of the key things is to be able to find time and space for these two communities to come together. So in the United Kingdom, in London, we have something called the Science Media Centre that was set up by the Royal Institution, a very famous scientific body, after this terrible mess we had about genetically modified foods. And it was set up explicitly to have a neutral space where scientists and journalists can come together and talk and develop these relationships of respect and an ongoing relationship. So I'm not just calling the scientist when the press release or the news hits the wires, I want a quick response and that's it. That you have follow-up, and that scientists also feel free that if I don't like the way that this story has been reported, I can now follow up because I know that journalist and I can continue the conversation. And it's good for us as journalists to have feedback from scientists. Patrice, do you find that there's a similar dynamic now in Belgium?
Yes, exactly. In our association, Belgian Association for Science Journalists, we have regularly some meetings with scientists. And exactly what you said, we are peers, we are under professionals from different point of view, different jobs, but we are professional and there is a respect. It's a question, I said a few minutes ago, it's a question of credibility, of respectability from the both sides. There is more or less the same thing in Belgium than in London, maybe not in the same scale, of course.
Right, we have question here and then question here.
Okay, I'm Jan Lublinski from Germany. I've been the science editor at Deutsche Welle for some years, and I have also been involved in some newsroom research on science journalism and how to organize science journalism in the newsrooms. And one important result that I've found with my colleagues comparing different newsrooms and how they succeeded in covering science was that there's two options that are both not very good. The one option is having the science reporter sitting in a corner doing his small 10-minute every week and having a lot of time to do that and preparing maybe a nice documentary, but when it really comes down to breaking news, he's not able to do it. He can't, he's not quick enough, doesn't have the journalistic skills to be really, competing with his political correspondent colleagues. And then there's the other side of having somebody who is interested in the science reporting, but who has an work overload doing the current breaking news reporting, and he can't establish contacts, he can't follow his stories. So I think the ideal, and I found examples, is to combine both. To have somebody 50% doing, maybe the luxury of doing some background reporting that is important, but that's not day to day, and at the same time force him to deliver background to the breaking news, and then you will eventually get something that works. That's my suggestion. I have quite a few examples from Germany where this is actually the case.
Thank you. Question, comment here.
Thank you very much. I'm Armand Faye, Senegalese science journalism, editor-in-chief of a quarterly newsletters on agriculture and development research in West and Central Africa. Let me come back on audience concern you talk about right now, because I want to draw your attention on the fact that one of the very important criteria defining audience is not taken into acquainted in this debate. It is the languages. Let me give you just some example. Nigeria is about 273 local or national languages. Cameroon is about 250 national local languages. And the paradox is the old journalists in general information or in science journalism are trained since kindergarten up to university in official languages, French and English, which are understood and speak by minority in our country. So take care of saying that there is not a problem of audience for science journalism. And I used to tell to scientists that your problem of communication with the public is not a problem of unskilled capacity of communication, but it is a problem of not being able to communicate in local language with the wide public you finance your research and your result. So science journalists are not capable to talk science in local language. So who is their audience?
Can we pick up Gervais, because you're training science journalists. How do you deal with this issue?
And
sorry, if we can just hear from Gervais how you deal with this particular issue of issues of language. Very important point.
It's true that let's say in Cameroon you have 253 or 55 languages, but what you can do is that you will train them in French and in English. But for me, the journalism is not a matter of language. Journalism is a method. You can be trained in French, you can be trained in English, and practice it in local languages if you want. Then there is a problem of audience. It's true, but the training is not, there is not an obligation to train people in their local languages, to train journalists. But their audience can be a local public. Then they could be trained in English, they could be trained in French, they could be trained in Spanish, but they can talk, they can speak to their local public.